The boss of the Chinese telecoms giant Huawei has issued a stark warning about the impact of US sanctions on his company. The sanctions would ban American firms from doing business with Huawei without special approval. Ren Zhengfei likened Huawei to a badly damaged plane, saying it will suffer a $30 billion fall over the next 2 years. It is the first time he's publicly quantified the impact of the backlash, previously having downplayed the effect of the sanctions.
While we realized that when we reached a certain level that there might be competition, it didn't occur to us that the US government would be so determined to take such extreme measures against Huawei. We've done some preparation. It's like a badly damaged airplane. We first protect the core components like the fuel tanker, not the other non-core components. So in the next 2 years, I think we will reduce our capacity and our revenue will be down by about $30 billion compared to forecasts.
Acknowledging there the scale of the trouble for Huawei. Joining me in the studio is Dr. Stephanie Hare, a researcher in technology and politics. I suppose, Stephanie, the first question is whether Huawei can find new suppliers.
Yeah, that's the question. So what's really interesting is before the interview that he just gave, he was saying that Huawei had already set aside and stockpiled quite a lot of its supplies, at least enough for 90 days, which happens to coincide with the period that the United States government will give a waiver to the American companies that supply Huawei. So the real crunch moment is going to be after August. That's when that waiver disappears and all US companies will have to get special permission to supply Huawei. Question is, does Huawei have other sources of supply?
Also, Huawei is going to have to come up with something itself, which is an operating system that really works. It said it's got this underway, but what do you think?
Well, they've said that they have it, but the problem, I think, whenever you take on anything to do with Google is that many companies have tried and failed. That doesn't mean that Huawei can't succeed, but some of the biggest tech companies in the world have tried to put out an operating system and have not supplanted Google.
Is there a way in which US businesses might be on Huawei's side here? Because the suppliers are going to lose a market.
Yes, so I think there might be some wiggle room here. The United States government, if it wanted to, and that's a different point, if it wanted to, could give some relief to US companies that supply Huawei smartphones. Anything to do with the 5G equipment would be a very different discussion because that's the national security threat
And Donald Trump's spoken out about that many times.
Exactly. So I think that's where we could see potentially some flexibility. We've got the G20 meeting in Osaka at the end of this month. We've got that August waiver deadline. That's where the United States might dangle some carrots, but the 5G kit will be very different to anything that happens with the smartphone. And it really depends. Is the US goal to break Huawei?
And that's what we're going to find out. Stephanie, thank you very much for coming in. Now, Iran has announced it will start